Hello and welcome to week 3 of the Unconventional Man. How are you guys doing? I know traditionally week 2 can be a tougher one. The excitement of week 1 is gone and you are finally in the trenches working on your plan. So the most important thing at this point is to remember to just stay patient and kind with yourself. You've only just started. If you're feeling great, like you're making some progress and things are feeling better, that is fantastic. Keep going like that. If you're feeling like you hit the dip early, that's fantastic because everybody hits the dip. So if you hit it now, then you don't have to worry about it later. Okay, so there's always a way to look at it, to feel through it. Your key things is to just stay consistent. So our focus for our overview for week 3, like the big picture things that I want you guys to keep in mind. As you're practicing these different shapes and you're working on the different things, what I want you to do is develop an understanding of what the skills are. So the big skills at this point are scoop, perch, and straight legs. So I haven't coached straight legs yet. I will do that on week 4. But scoop, I talk about it all the time, pulling your belly button in and up, sucking your ribs under. Perch, I haven't said as much, but it's a cue that you feel already when you're trying to reach your heels forward. So I will talk a lot about the heel to seat connection, how, basically your butt, your seat is your pelvic floor. And, if you think about your body and remember it's a collection of bones and your skin is just holding all this jelly and fluid in, and the muscle and the fascia is like the guy wires that are holding all the stuff together, okay? And so when you flex a muscle, you're actually tightening and securing things, right? So your perch, your seat, so if you stay where you are right now and I say get taller, okay, and you try to reach your head all the way up and you feel how your glutes go on, that's perching. That's that wrapping action of your sit bones, okay? So as you learn how to understand the skill of perch and scoop, okay, and you'll find them and learn how to use them in everything. That's that. So the reason I say understanding is because you'll keep getting better, okay? So I want you to feel where you are now, feel like you're doing it, and then recognize and understand and always be trying to get better at it. Find it in new places, okay? That leads to the second big thing I want you guys to think about this week, which is finding ways to stack your training. So what do I mean by stacking your training? It means having a more intelligent understanding of how things become something, or how a habit gets ingrained. Sometimes we go, and I understand that psychologically it may make sense to break things down into 3 months or 2 weeks or 10-week trial periods, but ultimately your physical feelings, what you have on the outside, is a result of what happens over time. So that the measure is the whole thing, or if you need to chop it down to something, I would say the best way to kind of look at, okay, how am I doing, is to look at the year. Okay, let's take this 10 weeks and imagine at this point extrapolating it over the year. Can you hold this twice a week steady Pilates practice for the rest of the year? Because if you do, at the end of that journey, you have a whole different understanding of these things we're talking about: perch, scoop, and straight legs. So how do you do that? You do that by not only tying yourself to the practice days. So if your practice days are Tuesday and Thursday, that's great. That's your specific thing that you're doing, right? You got to be consistent in that, in the skills. But frequency comes in when you learn how to do it in front of the TV. Learn how to do a version of it at your desk at work. Learn how to work on your back bend while you're at soccer practice for your kids, right? So you've got to understand the shapes, understand what they are, and stack them into your life, little places all over the place. And that's how the whole year turns out to be this really powerful thing, because I didn't read that part. Your frequency your micro practices and your consistency, your specific practices, that's the stuff that ultimately changes your body. Okay, breathing. So I really enjoy teaching and practicing breathing. I really enjoy the effect I know it can have. And I'm talking about breathing as this physical thing, but it's always more than just that, because breathing is that transfer point between, where what we can control and what fuels us and how we fuel ourselves, it just kind of gets meshed in. Okay, so no matter what, you got to understand that when you practice breathing, you're practicing more than that. So to get good at breathing, you're getting good at a lot of things. Okay, so this part of the breath is about the exhale. And this diagram, well, on the left, you have to understand what you're doing when you're pulling your inhale. So when you are pulling your inhale, you have to imagine that you are pulling the diaphragm down. It's pulling away from your head, okay? That's the flexion that's happening. So how is that happening? So your diaphragm is like a disc, okay? It's a disc muscle, and the contracting part of it is in the center. I kind of wish I would have got you guys this. Maybe I'll do this for next week. So imagine this disc with a thing in the center. So when you contract your diaphragm, what it does is it squeezes in the center. Okay, so it's down this way. So it squeezes its center. And as it does that, it pulls the edges down towards it. So that muscle there at the top, and there is a tendon in there that attaches from here to your spine. Okay, and so when I am scooping, I imagine that I am using that tendon. I'm pulling, I'm closing that gap. That's what I imagine. So I feel like I can get the cinching action. But just so you know, what you're visualizing on the inside when you're inhaling, it's that okay, and that's making everything. It's like pulling on the strings, and so your ribs expand like an accordion. There's muscles in between your ribs. Okay, so that's the okay. I'm talking about the inhale. My goodness. Okay, so the exhale portion, what we do is we typically just relax it, right? And then gravity pulls the ribs down, and because the diaphragm relaxes, it just kind of floats upwards. So what I'm saying now is at that upward floating part where you have 20% of the oxygen left in your lungs, you're going to push. Till you have nothing. Vacuum it all the way out, okay? And when you vacuum it, that's when you'll be able to get deeper into your scoop and feel it into your spine, and you're pressed all the way out. And that is a different strength, okay? That strength will help you relax past pain, okay? That's why that's really, really important. Like at the end, I want you to imagine now that you're doing roll up, okay? Your first exercise, like you're rolling forward, and I'm going to talk to you guys about pulling your ribs in and scooping and pulling your ribs in. And so as you're reaching forward, you want to use your inhale, okay? And now to get your head and your C curve, you exhale. And the more you can exhale, the deeper you can pull that curve, and the more you can articulate your spine. Okay, so when you're practicing your breathing, okay, I've talked to you about getting the full inhale, and now you're going to practice getting the full exhale and pushing everything out. Okay, it says kind of pause and relax there. I don't know if there's a really yeah, there is. So at the end of it, there's a space like where you just kind of like let go of the body, and that's important at both ends because it helps the body feel homeostasis or more natural at that end zone that you're trying to work on. So let me try that again. When you inhale, you go all the way up and you're like stretched fully out. What you want to do is stop your breath and just relax. with the inhale in there, and let the muscles and the nervous system like relax into the new space that you've created. That way it gets to know that new space as a natural relaxed space. You go back down to the bottom, exhale everything out, relax, okay? So your body gets to understand how deep you can relax. I'm pausing for the cause. Okay, good, you're ready. So that was rolling, that was breathing, and that will be very, very valuable. So rolling the low back, oh my goodness. You guys should be excited about this one. Like, well, we've done the big three. So we've done the hamstrings, the quads, and the low back. And like that trifecta are the biggest muscles that cover the hips, okay? And so to be perfectly honest, that is the superficial layer that we're going on. It's the very top layer. It is the layer that you see. It's a very important layer, but it's not the most important layer in terms of reducing pain. Like if that layer is causing the pain, then you got to work hard. Okay, so I'm not to move it over like it's not important. It is important that we get through these layers, but just know that there is a deeper step. Okay, and so getting to the low back and understanding how to roll the low back is a truly important part of starting to get to that next layer. Okay, so in the video at the very beginning, when I'm like showing you guys how to roll very fast over your low back, right? And I'm saying, no, that's not how you do it. What you want to learn to do is settle your body around the roller. Okay, so the pictures right here, these show you the superficial layers that you are going to feel first. Okay, so on the right side, or the furthest one to the edge, you've got that big X, okay, and that X is a line of pull. So that shows you how your left arm is connected to your right hip and your right arm is connected to your left hip. And the truth is that cross pattern behind us, that comes from the fact that we used to, or as infants, we walked on all fours. Okay, so it's through the back of the body that the legs and the arms are connected. And that's something really, really important to remember as we get into strength training, or even as we go into our stretching and rolling. Okay, so that line, so that's one of the superficial layers that we're gonna be feeling as we roll the low back. Okay, if I move to the picture towards the inside, you'll see our hamstrings, which we rolled already, okay? And then you'll see that little, the tip of the triangle, the tip, yeah, the very tip of the triangle, right? So that's your sacrum. And that crossing point, as you can see, is really, really important for how the hamstrings and the low back speak to each other. Now, you know that the hamstrings and low back speak to each other, which means if one is tight, the other may suffer, and vice versa. But this is how, okay? And just so, because we're clear, like everything blue on that line can affect anything else on that line. So you see the calves are there, the bottom of the feet are there, upper back, back of the neck, even right up to the top of the head. That's all one line of movement. So when we stretch any, we're stretching all. Okay, so we're doing this in parts. And so now you guys see this is the superficial layer that I want you guys to learn to work through first. I guess for the sake of understanding what it is you're trying to do, so in these pictures, I have the actual vertebra, like your spine. And when we are like wrapping ourselves around the roller, what we're practicing doing is articulating the vertebrae. So articulation is the scientific name for movement of a joint, okay? And the vertebra, your spine, okay, it moves, but it moves in a certain way. And well, in a nutshell, what I wanted this to communicate is I want you to see the snake-like pattern of it, okay? And so as you imagine yourself doing these rolling and J-curve techniques, I would like you to imagine, first, if I wanted to change the shape of these, so see how they're kind of stacked up on top of each other. That means when they move, like if I move them, the two edges can come close together, okay? And we don't want that to happen. We want the cushion in between to always have a lot of space. So step one, what we do is we learn to lengthen it. So that's why sitting up nice and tall is always important, and learning how to use your muscles to stretch the length of your spine, okay? That's step one in all of it. And then with that length, we learn how to curve it or articulate it in different ways. Okay, the reason why it's so important, on the right side, you will see this diagram that shows how everything in our body passes through our spine. And so that's why spine health is so important, the ability to articulate and control your spine. That's the true reason why it's so important, right? And that's why these exercises will feel good. So as you get strong, you create space and freedom and movement and all types of crazy good benefits. Okay, so the technical name of what we are working on when we roll is called spinal extension. And so that's like, you know, lifting up. And so here's some examples of where you would see it. So in the top right, you actually see the foam roller exercise that we're working on. And you can see how there's that necessity or desire to hold the head. Part of holding the head is helping to hold, because now, as you guys should, I want you guys to recognize that the head is part of the spine. It's the heaviest bone on the spine, right? And so it's got to be in line always. That standing version, you know, this is where we're going. This is why we have to practice this. This is why that on the bottom left, that standing version of that spinal extension feels so good for us. And again, notice the holding of the head to keep the head in line with the spine. And well, as we get into the difference between upper back and lower back and how it moves, the key thing you got to know is that that spacing of the cushioning, that's on you to control, okay? And that is controlled by your scoop, right? So when we bend backwards, when we scoop from the front, what that does is it activates the muscles, the ribs, and they kind of pull and lift pressure off your back, right? So that's why to really be able to go back and stay pain-free, you got to scoop your ribs. So anytime you're moving into extension, you got to scoop your ribs. Okay, so here are some spaces where you guys will see, and you know what, this is a good way for you guys to consider how to incorporate it into your micro practices, right? So, you know, number 3, that shape is seated forward stretch. So you actually have an exercise to do out of that. You know, that idea of putting your hands into the floor to lift your chest nice and tall. I mean, bending your feet in as in number 2. And then, you know, there's a tall spine. And in your stretches, you could practice doing a C curve or practice doing a J curve, right? And so learning how to incorporate these postures and movements into everyday practice is going to be a really big part of how you guys get success. Oh, look at this. It comes to life. Yeah, number 1 I put there because I figured that would be a good way for you guys to understand, you know, how do I bring this to life when I'm driving or moving? Okay. So the Pilates workshop this week, we got really into the ab 5. And so I want you guys, you have to get clear on, and you'll get better at it, on what the action is you have to do to get the curve well. Okay, so in that bottom right corner, what I want you guys to first see is the sacrum, and see how the tailbone's pointed down flat. Good. And then look from the sacrum to the ribs, and notice how it's not a C curve. They're not crunching up. Okay, and so the very bottom of your ribs, just below where your pecs start, like that is where the J curve starts. So you've got to get good at cinching those ribs down and back. Okay, and then your head, notice there's space between her chin and her chest. Okay, so your head reaches up and then forward. Okay, and those hands on the head are helping you reach up and forward. You're literally trying to make the bottom part of the J curve with only your thoracic and your cervical spine. Okay, and so the action in this is forward with the head, back with the ribs, and that back with the ribs, the better you get at that, honestly, the lighter your head gets. Because if you remember in the front lines, we were turning through the abs. You should remember that your hip flexors, your core deep inside there, it went right up into your neck. So when I pull these ribs down, that's how I pull these muscles and I take the pressure off of the back of my neck, right? So if your neck is hurting in a J curve, keep breathing, keep working on the ribs, and keep working on getting your head forward and your shoulders down to get the pressure off. Okay, so that's your J curve emphasis and focus. On the right, so this position, they do it a lot in yoga, and it's a great stretch. It's called cat-cow. And so this position would be the cow position, and you can see the C curve here. And so what you have to be aware of is the action to create a C curve means you push your ribs away as you go in. So if you were to flip this picture horizontally, yes, horizontally, and imagine those hands reaching forward. So in something like rolling like a ball or seating forward stretch, it's like you're pushing the wall or something away from you, and that pushing away makes your ribs go back. Now, as your ribs go back, you go down and forward, and that's the feeling of a C curve added with the scoop, and you're breathing, and you'll start to get really deep into it. So I added something I'm going to show you at the end. I added a line to your workout, and it was basically a column that identifies what shape your spine is, so J curve, C curve. So we've talked about J curve and C curve, but the most important position for your spine is something called neutral spine. And so again, when your spine is neutral, it's actually curved, as in, the diagram on the right. And this one does a great job of getting you to see the different parts, okay? And over time, you'll learn the different parts move differently. But at this point, you can see where your scoop and your tallness come into play, okay? So when an exercise asks for a flat spine, what that typically means is you're pressing the back of your head, the back of your shoulders, the back of your pelvis into something, okay? And that's like a grounding. When something asks for a tall spine, it's that same feeling, but now maybe you don't have something behind you. And then you have to imagine the back of your head, the back of your shoulders, the back of your pelvis pressed into something, okay? You'll know that feeling is right when you feel the back of your head and your shoulders in line and down, but you'll feel a space under your lumbar spine. That's real, okay? Now you hold that space with your scoop, okay? You want that space as long as possible. Not as big as possible, as long as possible, okay? On the left, you'll see two things that can happen with your body when you use scoop and perch on the floor. And so the thing on the top one I want you guys to watch out for, not allow happen, is that arching of the back. If you're doing double leg lower lift, single leg circle, anytime you go flat on the back, you've got to cinch those ribs in and not let those ribs flare up. That's really, really important. At the bottom left, imprint, okay? So that's you pressing your lumbar spine into the mat. That would be what we would call a step, a regression from doing the exercise with neutral spine. Okay, so I want the exercises when it's flat done with neutral spine, but sometimes it is easier to hold your scoop when you press your lumbar spine into the mat. Okay, and that's okay as long as you guys feel like you're working your scoop, and I'm helping you guys understand how to play with that feeling. So the key thing here is knowing what tall is, what flat is, and those both encompass what we call a neutral spine. I just put this one in because, we were talking about shapes, and this one was in last week's, but I don't really have too much to say about this one right now. Okay, the big part is, so Thank you for your feedback on your emails. Please continue with that. Please give me lots of details. Thank you for the phone calls this week. That was really, really good and really helpful. And it helped me adjust and make some additions. So look out for those. What you want to do, what I want to make sure you guys are on the same page with is every single time you Pilates, go to at least exercise number 17, which is double leg kick. Even if you don't feel like you know what you're doing just yet, do it anyway, because the repetitions add up. And you have the big thing, which is scoop. Okay, and then you guys are going to practice stacking your exercises. This is some feedback that came back from the conversation this week. And so when you're being creative about stacking your exercises, remember there are exercises that you kind of need to be alone for. You know, Pilates and breathing, those are best when you're undisturbed. And so those ones may require scheduling conversations with somebody to make sure everything else is taken care of so you can focus on you for a while. And so just think about that. And then there are things that you can plan to do with others around. I mean, you can roll while your significant other is cooking dinner or while you guys are watching your favorite show. You know what I mean? You can stretch while you are at soccer practice. Absolutely you can. Why would you not? What else are you doing? Right? And so this just kind of came to me because this actually was something that came from somebody that I was studying breathing with, and they were talking about waiting. Actually, it's from the book, The Power of Now. There's talk about, how we wait so much every single day. We wait in line, we're waiting for tickets, we're waiting at the grocery store, and a lot of us are so impatient in this waiting moment, but the thing we always are asking for is this time and space to be left alone and just relax. And sometimes those waiting spaces are those times for you to practice your breathing and relaxation. So I would take that a step further and be like, some of those waiting times are the perfect time for you to practice your shapes. Who says you can't grab yourself and stretch in the grocery line? Oh, listen, it just depends on how much you are willing to go into you, and frankly, how much you are willing to step outside of yourself to let people know that if we don't start moving better, then we're all going to hurt, So until next time, my friends, I think that was a great week. Thank you guys so much. Be unconventional.